Welcome to another United States history lecture. This time we're going to be looking at the dawn of mass culture. Sounds kind of like a movie title, maybe an art exhibit. So I'll explain what mass culture is in the course of this lecture, and we will look at how it relates to the late 19th century. The target is 5.02. I'm going to pose a question to you first, just to get your thinking. If Americans are buying factory-made products that are available across the United States, then how likely is it that they have the same consumer experiences? So I'm asking you to think about, what does it mean for consumers in the US to purchase the same goods no matter where they live? What would that be like for them? Do they experience those goods in the same way? The shared experience of being a consumer of the same products is called mass culture. The word mass implies that everybody experiences this culture. Mass culture doesn't have to be just consuming products. It could be consuming music or art or literature, anything that you can produce culturally. But in the late 19th century, we're going to look specifically at the buying and selling of goods, products that are being made and shipped all across the United States. So that if you were in Wisconsin or in South Carolina, you could have a conversation with someone about the same products. One of the things that historians of culture note is that mass culture tends to make people more alike. Shared experiences, they understand each other. They can talk about things that both of them have experienced. Here are some examples of mass culture in our day. These are just things that we've collectively experienced and understand and know that no matter where you go, McDonald's is the same. Nike shoes are the same. People know who Maroon 5 is, though maybe I should update that with somebody else, like Billie Eilish. Um, People understand in America who Batman is. They've got a sense of Scotch tape. Whereas if you went and plucked someone outside of American culture and sat them down and said, I'm going to give you something from Abercrombie and Fitch, they wouldn't know what that meant. They wouldn't know how to interpret that. It wouldn't make sense to them. They'd go, who's Abercrombie and Fitch? So mass culture tends to make us more alike. Doesn't necessarily mean that we all agree on the culture, that we all like it. You know, some of us like McDonald's, some of us don't like McDonald's. Regardless, we all know about McDonald's. One reason for increased mass culture in the late 19th century has to do with advertising. Getting people to buy things they didn't even know they wanted. In 1865, advertising was about $10 million a year in expenses. But by 1900, advertising was generating about $95 million a year. That's a lot of spending on ads to get people to buy products. Many of these ads were much more visual. Early advertisements in American newspapers were text-based. It would say simply what the name of the product was, where you could get it, and whether or not it was going to be really cheap, or, here's an idea of how much it might cost. Much more likely by 1900 is to see a visual ad, a drawing, a person enjoying that product, or a picture of the product itself. Ads begin to dominate newspapers by 1900. Much of a newspaper in, say, 1800 as opposed to 1900 would be text, very dense, heavy text of wars and essays and letters and the latest gossip about everything going on politically. But by 1900, you start to see large sections of advertisements fill up newspapers. And newspapers go from 4 pages to being 12 and up to 20 pages. As newspapers expanded, they included a lot more to entice their customers. By 1900, you could routinely see comics in a newspaper, news about sports teams, and we do have an activity coming up where we'll talk about the origins of 19th century sports. Sunday editions with more stories about things you can do around town and maybe the latest gossip. Stories of sin, in quotation marks, that is more scandal and excitement because that sells newspapers. It encourages people to buy if you can put a really, really, really wild headline on the front of your newspaper and then tell people to see page 6. Meanwhile, by the time they've got to page 6, they've already seen a bunch of ads and encountered a whole bunch of other stories that may or may not be relevant to them. Two of the major newspaper editors at this time period in the late 19th century who are shaping the news are Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. We're going to be talking about them more because they're involved in the United States getting into a war. They know that the most sensational stories, the wildest stories, the most exciting things possible, that's what sells newspapers. Here is a picture of a newspaper. This actually happens to be a North Carolina newspaper that I used in my dissertation. You can see it's not very visual. Little fingers pointing as if to say, look at this is important. Little tiny symbols here and there, but no pictures of goods. You know, here's a storehouse you can rent, occupied by the late Andrew Fleming and Company, but no picture of it, so you don't know what it looks like. Or this cotton mill. Who knows if that's going to be good or not? You just got to go see it. Here is a late 19th century newspaper, the San Luis Obispo Tribune. I picked an obscure one just to show you, even like the most obscure hometown newspapers had pictures in them. So we're going to show you the latest fashions. This hotel, you should go stay there. Notice the change in the fonts to draw your attention to things. Text is less dense, you can see overall, and a lot more space, which is going to draw your eye to this Barney Cole Ranch for sale, for example. A lot of the ads that you would see in the 19th century would be for miraculous medical cures. Things like this Brewster's medicated electricity, which is pretty amazing. It cures your headache, neuralgia, nerve problems, hay fever, if you got allergies, catarrh, and cold in the head. So apparently this gentle vapor, which is safe and convenient, will cure all these problems. Oh, and also it says failing eyesight and deafness. Dang, that's pretty awesome. Or Dali's magical pain extractor. Who knows what it actually does, but it's magical. You would see ads for the $5 pocket Kodak. Imagine being able to take pictures for yourself all over town whenever you want, mail the film off, and get images. You could see ads for things like Coca-Cola, which is invented during this time period in Atlanta, Georgia. This syrup and extract made a carbonated beverage, which was billed as intellectual and temperance drink. If you drink it, you won't be tempted to drink alcohol. It's got a valuable tonic and nerve stimulant of the coca plant. You know what that is, cocaine. Which you could also get in toothache drops if you needed it. These kids got a toothache? That's okay. Give them cocaine toothache drops. It'll cure them right up. Many Americans were going shopping in the late 19th century thanks to being bombarded with ads, and shopping changes pretty dramatically in the United States. Americans, for the first time after the Civil War, experienced department stores and indoor malls, places where you could go and shop for tons of different goods of all different kinds on many floors, as opposed to going around the corner to a small general store and being able to buy just a few things, or ordering things from traveling salesmen, which was common in this time period. Cleveland in 1890 had the first indoor mall. I'm going to show you a picture of it. Department stores appear by 1865. The most well-known example would be Marshall Field's of Chicago. There would be Montgomery Ward's, Sears, and Roebuck. These are names that are less familiar to us today, but we all understand the idea of a department store, whereas it was new for these folks back then. Another important part of going shopping in the 19th century was the development of pre-priced goods, meaning you could go into a store, pick up a shirt, and the price would already be standardly written on the shirt, instead of having to go and ask someone, how much is this? Pre-priced goods meant that people didn't have to ask for help. They could pick something up, make a decision, and then purchase it. Stores also offered store credit, which was not a credit card. It was simply a list of people that they maintained with how much you owed, and then you would send them payments if they deemed you credit worthy. If you weren't near a city and you couldn't get out and go shopping, you could try the Sears catalog. The Sears catalog was an enormous publication listing everything from clothing and toys and kitchenware to even a full house. That's right, an actual house that you could buy from Sears, and it would be shipped to your home if you've got the money for it. In 1902, the United States established rural free delivery so that you would get your shipments free right to your door. Think about ordering online right to your door. Oh, but then again, of course, you know about that now. In our day and age, we're accustomed to that idea, thanks to Amazon, for example, and all the other online marketplaces where we buy things and have them shipped to us. Postmates, Grubhub, we even do it with food now. But think about how that was new in the 19th century, and people having to learn and then adapt to this new culture of buying things and waiting for them to come to your house. Here is the mall in Cleveland. Quite pretty. This is Marshall Field's retail store. Look at how enormous that is. For all those shoppers to go in and buy just anything they wanted. And here is the cover of the Sears Consumer Guide. This one from the late 19th century offered people everything that you could imagine. I've clipped a page from the inside showing the clothes that you could pick up. This lovely shepherd check dress with black and red trimmings. Why, I bet everyone wants to wear one for prom this year, right? Of course. And as I indicated, you could buy a house from Sears. Look at this, this inviting $1,100 six-room cottage, modern home number 115. You just order it, and you could have your two-story 24 by 28 home. Just you and your friends get together, put it together, and boom, you've got a house. We actually do have Sears homes here in Bexley. In the Bexley Historical Society is in the process of documenting them. Quite a number of them are in South Bexley. It's more where you're more likely to find a Sears house. So that's it for our lecture on American consumer culture and the development of mass culture in the late 19th century.